Hi everyone, welcome back to the Torok channel. So, when I have made a review video about the Hardy Benton Fusion 3, that you can find a link up there, I have asked you guys if you were interested in me making a video about the Floyd Rose and how to set it up and this kind of things. Some of you are interested in this video, so here it is. For the purpose of it, I'm gonna use my Schecter Damien Platinum FR. This Floyd Rose is a Floyd Rose special, but nonetheless, this guitar is really great. And even when I play dive band, this kind of things, even though it's a Floyd Rose special, it stays in tune very well. So we're gonna imagine the worst case scenario that could happen to you when you buy your guitar with a Floyd Rose, new or used. The guitar is out of tune. The Floyd Rose is not parallel to the body of the guitar. The string action is completely wrong, and the truss rod adjustment is completely wrong too. So you have to do everything by yourself, or you return the guitar if you buy it new, and if you can do it. But I don't think that this kind of thing would happen to you when you buy a new guitar. Maybe something I'm not gonna be right, but not everything is gonna be wrong. But if you buy a guitar in the used market from someone who got pretty much lost into setting this in tune, maybe that's what you're gonna have. And in case only just a few things are wrong, well, you just have to move to the good chapter and see how I'm doing it. Keep in mind, I am not a luthier, but I have started playing guitars with Floyd Rose back in 1998, so I'm really used to working with these things, and I know how to set them up, and you know, I'm not afraid with that. Okay, and just before we set this guitar in tune, I would just like to ask you to subscribe to this channel if it's not already done. Leave thumbs up, leave comments, share the videos with your friends, your family, social networks. You know how this thing works. And if you order anything from my partner Thomann, please use my partner links that's going to be in the description down below. You could, for instance, be interested in this Schecter Damien Platinum, still on sale on Thomann. I'm going to leave you a direct link to it up there. Great guitar, really. Okay, so now let's go to this guitar and let's go for some Floyd Rose surgery. Okay, so there we are, ready for a little bit of guitar surgery. First things first, let's talk about the Floyd Rose and how this thing works. Basically, it's a constant balance between the strings that are here and the springs that you can see out there. Don't worry, for this I didn't screw it up on purpose, never mind. Alright, so the tuning stability depends on the good shape of every piece of this equipment, including of course the locking nut, the blade here, well, okay, everything contributes to make your guitar stable. So whatever you do on one string, and that's important to remember, has an impact on all the others. So if you have to set up your guitar and you just need minor adjustment, you can use those fine tuners that are here. Okay, that will save you from doing the job with the classic tuners and the locking nut. Understanding all these things will help you anticipate and make the right operations in the right order. So I'm going to give you my own tips in order to gain some times. But keep in mind that everything on a guitar with a Floyd Rose is longer than whatever you could do on a guitar with a hardtail. There's no escape, there's no shortcut about that. So if you don't have the time, if you don't feel easy, if you're afraid you could damage your guitar or the Floyd Rose, better go to a guitar tech or a luthier. Of course it will cost you something, but at least your guitar will be safe. And keep in mind that paying 1 hour of work from a luthier that's sometimes 70, 80 bucks is still cheaper than buying a brave new Floyd Rose. Okay, so now let's talk about the tools we're gonna need for this surgery. First, I advise you really should go for this kind of workstation. This one from the brand Hardy Benton, as you can see. I paid it something like 20 bucks if I remember well. And I'm pretty much using it all the time for everything I do on my guitars. You also need Phillips screwdriver, okay? As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to use 2 of them. You also need a ruler, and it is here, okay? Little rocking ruler. That's going to help you, you know, check out the height of your string when you have to set the action up. You will also need a set of Allen wrenches. So in general, when you buy a guitar with a Floyd Rose new, it comes with two or three different type of Allen wrenches. You've got this one to unlock the tuner and to set up the things here when you have to change the strings. You have this one here, which is a little bit smaller, to adjust the intonation. As far as I'm concerned, I have also this one for the buttons here, if you want to unlock them. And I have this one, which is just for adjusting the curve of the neck with the truss rod. Okay? You also need, if you have one, a string winder. If you don't have it and you want to do it with your hands, no problem, but this thing will help you gain a lot of time. You also need something soft to put here under the Floyd Rose, because sometimes you will need to lock the Floyd Rose in good position. So what I'm using is this little piece of cloth plus this very old and damaged coaster that I'm not using as a coaster anymore, but you know, it comes here and it lets the Floyd Rose in good position when I have a few things to say. And one last thing that could prove useful, this piece of wood that I have cut and sized on purpose in order to completely block the trem if I need to, which means that when my trem is parallel to the body of the guitar, this thing fits it naturally and almost perfectly. There's really a few margin when I put it here. Okay, that's gonna be useful if you can make one. If you don't, I mean, you don't have to make it, but it will help if you're able to do it. Okay, and one last thing that you will need, of course, is a tuner. Okay, so now let's talk about the order of the operations. We are, as I said before, in a worst case scenario. That means nothing is good on your axe. It's out of tune, the Floyd Rose is not parallel to the body of the guitar, the action is bad and the intonation is totally wrong. So you need to set it up entirely. So in order to make the good things in the right way and in the good order, here's the order of the operations for an optimal result. First, we are gonna set the string action, okay? Then we're gonna check out that our Floyd Rose is parallel to the body of the guitar when the guitar will be in tune. Then we're gonna adjust the curve of the neck if necessary. And finally, we're gonna go for checking out and setting up the intonation. Okay, so the string action is completely out, meaning that, for instance, this one is way too high, this one is way too low, or the contrary, depending upon what you're going to encounter. You cannot adjust your neck if your string action is completely wrong, especially if it's too low and if your strings are hitting the frets. So, first things first, you always have to start with this point. I'm going to show you, of course, how it works, but very important, don't take no shortcut with this operation. The way to adjust the height of the strings is by, you know, turning these things high or low in order to adjust it. If I do it right now with the tension on the strings and on the springs, I will damage the blade of my trem block. So in order to avoid that, because if you damage the blades, you will lose your stability, your guitar will not come back in tune, and eventually it's gonna ruin all the good things our guitar with a Floyd Rose. So what we're gonna do first is release the tension. In order to release the tension, we need to get rid temporarily, of course, of the springs that are here, but in order to do that, first off, we have to completely release any tension in the strings. So what I'm doing, take my piece of cloth, I take my old coaster, take the arm of the vibrato, I set it here, and now I can release the tension on my strings. Why am I doing this? If you really release the tension on the strings, as I said before, what happens to one string is repercuted to the others. So if I release the tension on my strings, starting with the low E, eventually the high E will have a lot of tension. It might damage the string, it might make it fragile, and eventually it will break very soon after. So unless you intend on changing the string, just do this and your strings will be safe. Here we go. So I unlock the nut here. And anyway, I always start with the high string. Okay, so I have done 9 laps on each tuner to release the tension of the string. Keep that number in mind, it will help. Now what I do is release my coaster and my piece of cloth. No more tension on my strings, so I can turn the guitar down. Okay, and now I can get rid of my 3 springs. One after the other, of course. Okay, so now you can adjust the action of your strings because there's no more tension. Be careful because the springs are out, so if you take your guitar like this, as you can see, your trem block is moving alone. So hold it with your finger, get the guitar back, and there you are. Okay, so no more tension, so I can turn this thing up or down in order to adjust the height of the strings as I want it. Okay, tiny bit higher here, tiny bit lower here, for instance, you know. In order to check out the quality of my setup, and since there is no more tension, that's where my little piece of wood is gonna be useful. So I'm gonna show you how I'm doing it with this little piece of wood. It's very easy. I turn the guitar back, I put it here between the body of the guitar and the trem block. It will not move, and when I bring back some tension here on my strings, because I need to do that in order to check my action, it will stop any move from the trem. If I don't put this piece of wood, the trem is going to lift, and of course I cannot measure my action with Floyd rose that's completely up. Okay, there's enough tension here on my lowest string. I'm going to do the same thing on my highest string. 9. It's a bit lower than it should be, but so far that's not really important. What matters is that first, my floor rose is parallel to the body of the guitar, and second, there is tension, so I can measure the height that I have here on my string at the 12th fret. Okay, so here I have 1.5 and here I have 1. It might sound like it's very low action, and it might sound like if I keep this setup I cannot play the guitar. Well, that's wrong. Don't forget that only 2 strings have tension, the other 4 are completely loose. So the curve of my neck is not done. I mean, like this, my neck is completely flat. When everything is in tune, the curve of the neck does exist. I generally put 0.3 millimeters at the height of the 7 frets, which means that I'm going to gain something like 0.5 in terms of action here. So I have to take this in account so I don't have to redo the job again. 1.5 here means at the end of the operations I'm back to 2 millimeters. 1 millimeters here means at the end of the operation I'm at 1.5, and that's my classic setup for this guitar. I can go for super low action thanks to my string gauge 1052. What you have to know about the Floyd Rose, it really makes the action easier to set up because the tension on the strings, I mean, the shear tension, okay? So this one is really big, and the tension it should have alone, if I had a hardtail, is given partly to the others, and it helps make the action really very low. That's one of the things I love with Floyd's guitars. Okay, so now I have set my actions up. Just before I have measured my action. Okay, if I realize it's too high or too low, first I loosen my string, then I set up. Okay, even if there's not a lot of tension because of the springs that are out, there's still some tension here. So you always loosen the strings before you do any action to set up your action. Okay, so now the job has been done, so my action is now okay. I have taken into account the curve of the neck, so now I can go back to put my springs where they were. So I'm gonna release the tension on the strings, drop down, turn the guitar back. I take my little piece of wood that has proven very useful, and I'm gonna show you the same operation without the help of this little piece of wood if you don't have it at home. So if you have it, or if you decide to make it, you can jump to the next chapter. Okay, for those who will not go for this little piece of wood, here's how it's gonna work. You're gonna turn your guitar on the right side. You're gonna need some tension to check out if your action is good enough or not. I'm going to show it up to you with the lowest string, which is the biggest one. As I bring some tension to the strings, you can see that my Floyd rose is lifting up, which is normal because it's attracted by the tension of the string. If you want to check your action up, you need the Floyd to be parallel to the body of your guitar. So if you don't have anything to block the trem, and that's why I really advise you should do there, you're gonna use your hands, keep the Floyd parallel to the body of the guitar, and you will measure the height of your string right here. Always check out that your bridge is parallel to the body of the guitar. Check out your string action. Okay, so that's about it. So have 1.5 here. Okay, and I'm doing the exact same thing, this time with the highest string. Again, my Floyd is lifting up, logical. If there is too much tension, okay, it's not what I'm encountering now, but if you feel there's too much tension for you to keep the thing, you release the tension here on the low E in order to make things easier. If not, it's okay, you can keep going. And again, you measure what your action is right now. As far as I am concerned, I am exactly 1 millimeter with my bridge parallel. Okay, so 1.5 here, 1 there. It sounds like it's not enough, but keep in mind that even when I do this, my neck is completely straight. I mean, it doesn't have the curve that you generally have on a guitar neck. So if you add something like 0.3 millimeters of neck curve at the height of the 7th fret, it's gonna be something like 0.5 here at the 12th fret, and there you are. 1.5 plus 0.5, 2 millimeters, good. And on this one, 1.5 on the E string is good too. I'm used to this guitar, I know exactly how to set it up. If you are not sure of what you're doing, well, the only way to make sure that everything is good is, again, release the tension on your strings. Until your Floyd rose is going back down, okay? Then you return your guitar, and then you're going back with your springs, sorry, at least one of them, in order to check out if your action is good. But in general, it's always better to put back all the springs, check out your action, and if you need it, do it again. But if you're going there, you're going to lose a bit of time, of course. So that's why I really think you should keep in mind what action you want. When your strings are loose and when your springs are still out, you can set up your action here using your Allen wrench, down, up, okay? Same thing here, down, up. There is no risk of damage because there is no tension, okay? Of course, the blade is touching the little piece here, but really not a lot. And if there was the tension of the springs, there would be a risk, but not here. Okay, so we have set our action up. So now let's turn back the guitar, sorry, and let's put the springs back where they belong. Okay, so one spring at a time. In general, when you buy a guitar with the Floyd Rose new, you see that the springs are like that, you know, and the third one is here. I have read several advices of people saying that if your springs are not parallel, there's a risk for the stability of the Floyd Rose. So since I have read that, I am now putting my springs parallel to the body of the guitar. And I have found that when I put the 3 springs like that, especially on this one that I'm using quite a lot, especially these days, well, yes, that's right. When it comes back in tune, it's really in tune, and I can do dive moments kind of things. Even though it's just a simple Floyd Rose special, it's okay. So now, my springs are back. Let's go back to set the guitar in tune in order to check if our action is really as good as we wish it was. So, again, in order to help, my piece of cloth, my coaster, back here. It's just because it's going to lift the Floyd Rose a little bit. So, when I go back to set the guitar in tune, it will help seeing if everything is okay. So here we go for the strings. Okay. Of course, it's absolutely not in tune. It would be magic if it could be in tune like this. What I'm gonna do now is check out where I am. My low is not so far away. I'm gonna put back grossly. Yeah. This one is too high. Okay, so as you have seen, I really did these things grossly. The name of the game here was not to set the guitar completely in tune, but to have enough tension to lift the Floyd Rose and release my coaster and my piece of cloth. What I'm doing right now. Okay, if you have watched it, or maybe you have not seen it, okay, when I have set the lowest string in tune, it was a bit higher than E. Now it's lower than E flat. That's the illustration of what I was explaining to you a bit earlier. Whatever you do on one string have an impact on the others. I have set this one up at first, then all the others, and of course, when I have added some tension on the others, I have released some tension on this one. That's a principle that you should keep in mind, and that's gonna help us now set this guitar in tune quicker. So, too low, too low, too high, almost sharp, sharp, sharp. The two last ones have remained sharp because compared to the other strings, of course, they have much less tension. So even if you turn this one down a whole step, it will not have a major influence on the others. If you tune your low E a whole step down, of course it will change the tuning of all the other strings. Okay, so since I have this one which is too high, I'm going to start with it and I'm going to put it at the right place. Okay, now I know that if I tune this one up and then I do the others, this one will be brought back down. So what I'm doing is tuning it higher than it should. And I mean higher. Okay, not really in F, but higher than E. Same principle for my A, but a bit less high. Should be okay. This one okay. I'm gonna set my B hardly a bit higher than it should and my E in tune. Okay, so with this anticipation, let's see if my guitar is in tune or not. My E is almost good, my A is almost good, my D is a bit higher than it should, G is higher than it should, B is okay, E is okay. So this one is lower, this one is lower, this one is higher, this one is higher. So what I'm doing, I bring this one back to where it should be. That's it. Same for my G. And now my E is almost in tune. And my A is a bit higher. Okay, I'm in tune. My B is not far away. My E is good. So with this tip, that's just anticipating what's going to come next. I don't have to redo all my strings one after the other 5, 6, 7 times. That would happen if I was just setting all the strings normally in tune. So anticipate, you will gain some time. Alright, so now what we're going to check out is if our Floyd Rose is parallel to the body of the guitar. It is not, as you can see, I guess. It is a bit too high. It is lifting, so it means that there is not enough tension on the springs, because if there was enough tension, it would be flat. If it was flat, my tuning would be wrong. Okay, I have to take this in account. I'm going to release a bit of tension here on the strings. And of course, it will not stop me from checking out if my action is good. Okay, now my Floyd Rose is parallel to the body of my guitar. I have lost a bit of tension, but my curve of the neck should be okay. It is. So the way I set the curve of my neck, one finger here at the 24th fret, my little finger here at the 1st fret, and my thumb on the 7th fret. What I aim at checking out is I need some space between the string and the fret. Okay? I have a bit of space. It should be something like 0.2 millimeters, something like that. I should consider it's not enough because it's not enough, but I know, because I know this guitar very well, if the tension on the strings and on the strings is good, it climbs up at 0.3, which is what I want. So in order to really make sure that my setups are good, I'm gonna give the tension that's required here. Just a quarter lap should be enough. Half lap, let's say. Okay. I bring my guitar back to where it should be. And again, I'm gonna check out my tuning. Okay, apart from the A string, that's a bit too high, but everything is good. And this time, I have a Floyd rose that's really parallel to the body of the guitar. So, everything is good. And I can check if my action is exactly the way I wanted it to be with my neck that has its normal curve. Yeah, that's 2 millimeters, that's okay. And that's 1.5, that's okay. That's exactly what I wanted to do with this guitar. So now, the FR is parallel to the body of the guitar, and the guitar is in tune, so that's great. If you need to adjust the curve of your neck, you do it right now. If you don't, you move to the next step. So when it comes to adjust the curve of your neck, it's not different with the Floyd rose and without the Floyd rose, the same principle. You use your Allen wrench, you turn one quarter after the other. So I'm not going to show it up to you because it's not specific to the guitars with Floyd rose, and I'm pretty sure you can do it anyway. So now we're going to check out the intonation of our guitar, because as I said before, logically everything is wrong. So let's check out, for instance, the slowest string. Okay, it's good. But let's imagine, for the purpose of this video, that the intonation of this guitar, of this string, sorry, is wrong. So, if you want to check the intonation, if you want to set the intonation up, you need to put your little Allen wrench here on the little spring that is there. Of course, you are disturbed by the presence of the string, so you have to loosen your string. As you have seen, and especially with the low E, if I loosen the tension on the string, my Floyd rose is gonna fall down, and that's not what we want, because setting up the intonation on a guitar requires a lot of precision. So that's when we're gonna use our little piece of wood here. So I know this one is a tiny bit too small, so I'm gonna help it with my clothes. There it will stay. Okay, it doesn't move. My Floyd rose is still parallel to the body of the guitar, and as you can see, it will not move anymore. So now I can release the tension here and come there and unscrew this. Okay, so I unscrew it. Now I can move my little saddle here up or down according to what I need, basically. So if your tune on the 12th fret is too high, you need to move the saddle backward. If it's too low, you need to move your saddle in this direction, so forward. Sorry. So as you can see, I cannot go further because of the screw that is here. So you have to realize that there is a second screw hole here. So if you don't have the place to move your saddle forward, you just need to change the position of the screw. Okay. And put it in the other hole, like this. That's why you see that some of the saddles here have the screw there, the screw there. So when you set the intonation on a guitar with a Floyd Rose, you can really take some time because it requires a lot of precision, as I said before, and as you certainly know. And well, one step after the other. But each time you will make a move, you will need to check if your string is in tune or not. So maybe you're going to do it 1, 2, 3, 5, 10. Okay. But what matters is the final result. What you want is your guitar to be perfectly intonated, and when you get this result, you're okay. So, one string at a time. You check out after you have done your setup, and you go to the next one by one. You don't care if when this one is in tune, the others are not. It's an individual setup, and that's why we have used our little piece of wood to block the trem, so it doesn't move, so the bridge stays in the good position, and you can check the strings individually. And when the job is done, well, you just have to set your guitar in tune one more time, and this time should be the last, and this time it should be for good. Okay, and one last step before you can consider your guitar is in tune, you need to adjust your fine tuners here. As you can see, these are little screws, you can push up or down. You always need to have some action either up or down. So pay attention that you can move them in both directions. Okay. What I generally do is manage having one entire lap to move up. So, okay, that's one lap, and that's okay. I'm doing it for all my fine tuners because in general, well, if you need to bring it up, it means that your note is too high, which is not gonna happen very often. Generally, your guitar is too low and you have to adjust it by going down. But sometimes it happens when, for instance, the weather is changing, the weight is changing, the heat is changing, so always have this little margin with your fine tuners, and when your fine tuners are good and the tuning on your strings is good too, well, you're good to go. If you realize that your fine tuners were all completely down and you have to lift them up, it's gonna have an impact on the tension on the strings and also on the tension on the springs. In this extreme case, it might have an impact also on the parallelism of the bridge in comparison to the body of the guitar, so maybe you will have to readjust it. In this case, my fine tuners are okay, my Floyd Rose is still parallel to the body of the guitar, and my guitar is still in tune. Now, I'm locking my nut again. When you lock your nut, the strength you have between your thumb and your index is enough. You don't need to take the same completely in your hand and, you know, put it as a booty, you know. Keep it soft and firm. If you go too high on pressure on the locking nut, you will eventually damage and fragilize the strings. You risk to have more string breaks, and you also might damage a little bit of your locking nut. Okay, so now my guitar is in tune, the action is good, my bridge is parallel to the body of the guitar, and the curve of my neck is okay, so I can play it. But just before I go there, take my guitar back, turn it back, and as you can see, the blade is missing. I have seen very often ads for guitar with Floyd Rose on which the plate was missing. I'm pretty sure that the owners of this guitar have just forgotten to put it back to where it belongs, and eventually they lost it. So, if you don't want this to happen to you, well, you take your screws, you put them back, and you're good to go. Okay, so now, job done? Well, not entirely. As you can see, this guitar is really dirty, and since we have manipulated everything, including the strings, this guitar needs to be cleaned. So, for the body of the guitar, I'm using either my Dunlop 65 or my Tatario. Still, a piece of cloth in order to make the guitar clean. And for the strings, Dunlop 65 string cleaner. So, very easy. Press a little bit here, put it on the strings, and that's something you should do every time you play with your guitar, especially if your palms are a bit wet, if it's out there, or if your hands are not completely clean. Another piece of cloth. Okay, so now the strings are clean. I'm going to do the same thing with the body of the guitar. So when you use this kind of polish, especially on a guitar with a matte finish, not directly the product on the guitar, but the product goes on the cloth, like this. And then softly, you take care of your guitar. And that's what it's all about. Pay respect to your axes. Always pay respect to your axes. Okay, now it's cleaner, but not completely clean, as you can see. I guess you can see it here on the back of the body. That's what happens with those guitars with matte finish. I find them very nice, but they always keep a little bit of prints, especially fingerprints. And at the end of the day, they start shining a little bit where you put your fingers. More generally, for instance, if I turn my guitar back, you can see that this part here is shining, and that's because I always have my fingers right here when I'm playing. So that's something that everybody who possesses a guitar with a matte finish will tell you. There's nothing you can do about that. If you want the painting to be redone, well, you can go to a luthier and ask him to do so, but that's gonna cost you a lot, and eventually it will come back. So if you have, like me, some guitars with a matte finish, well, keep that in mind. But I mean, at least for the rest, this guitar is clean, it's nice, it's good to go, it's doing a very great job, so I'm okay. Okay, so I hope this video has been useful to you, and it's gonna help you set your guitar with Floyd Rose in tune. There are quite a few things I didn't talk about because this video is already pretty long and I didn't want to have it lasting for 1 hour, but I think I'm gonna make a second video about the Floyd Rose. This time I will talk about what happens when you try to change the tuning of your guitar, set it in E flat instead of E standard, or put it in drop D and this kind of things. What happens when you change your string gauge or your string materials. How to take care of your Floyd Rose in order to have it lasting as long as you possibly can. And eventually, we're going to talk about quite a few things, quite a few options that you can add at your Floyd Rose, some silent springs, some detuner, and okay. So that's for the next video about the Floyd Rose. If you have any question about this video, let me know in the comment section, and I'll give you answers either in the comment section itself or in the next video. Thanks for watching, see you next time.